Federal Workforce Fallout is sponsored by Prince George's Community College.
You're watching Federal Workforce Fallout, where each week we break down the impacts to our neighbors in the federal workforce. I'm Rafael Sanchez Cruz, in for Larry Miller. This show is dedicated to the reduction of the federal workforce and the impact it's having on workers, our families, and our local and national economy. We're providing context, fact-checking claims to get you advice from career experts as well. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to give you the most comprehensive outlook we can of the Trump administration's ongoing efforts to shrink the size of the federal workforce. Today, we'll be talking about the ongoing partial government shutdown and its impact on you and federal workers. It's been more than 2 weeks since funding lapsed for the Department of Homeland Security, and both sides say the ball to end the impasse is in the other's court. Erica Brown has more from Capitol Hill.
As the partial government shutdown continues, the White House rebuffed the latest proposal from congressional Democrats to end the stalemate and fund the Department of Homeland Security.
Last night, they sent over a counter proposal that frankly was very unserious, and we hope they get serious very soon because Americans are going to be impacted by this.
Democrats remain firm in their demands for significant reforms to ICE and DHS oversight, including requiring federal agents to get judicial warrants before entering private property and remove masks during operations.
Republicans have decided that they would rather shut down FEMA, shut down TSA, and shut down the Coast Guard than get ICE under control.
So far, negotiations to end the impasse are only taking place among staffers, with Democratic leaders and the president still not engaging in direct talks.
It doesn't mean he's not willing to. I'm just not aware of any conversations that have taken place.
I'm not averse to sitting down with any high-level members of the administration if, in good faith, they are prepared to discuss the type of dramatic changes that are needed.
In a statement, the Department of Homeland Security warned a prolonged shutdown would impact more than 200,000 DHS employees and could lead to disruptions with the TSA, FEMA, and the Coast Guard. Erica Brown, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
Now, as the partial government shutdown continues and thousands of federal workers are left in limbo with no end in sight from Congress, we wanted to talk to the experts on how exactly those working in DHS are being impacted and what to expect moving forward. Our Larry Miller talked with Professor of Political Science at Virginia Tech, Dr. Karen Holt, about this ongoing dilemma.
Dr. Holt, I want to get your take on the now ongoing partial government shutdown, specifically surrounding DHS. No doubt this is having an impact on the thousands of federal workers that work within that particular agency and the different subsets as well. From your vantage point, what sort of political blowback does this result in, this ongoing partial government shutdown for the party that's currently the majority and potentially for Democrats as well?
Well, it's hard to tell because in many ways, the actual impact of the shutdown on people around the country is not yet as clear as it might be. It's kind of for many people, not quite background noise, but it's still there. But it also underscores real frustration, I think, among many people in the broader voting population, in the broader American public. That is the sense that government is not able to work together, especially in Congress, but also between Congress and the presidency. So I think all of those things are going on. The backstory to this, of course, as well, gets into some of the current presidential and DHS concerns with the treatment, the ICE treatment of people around the country, as well as the Border Patrol. So that's the background and possible costs for Democrats and the Republicans and the administration too. At the same time, there's a sense in which the Democrats simply are refusing to work with, or seem to be saying that they're working with the administration and the Republicans in the Senate as well. So it's a very difficult situation. In terms of people actually reacting to it, I think there will be far more of a sense of difficulty the more that this drags on in terms of time, because we know, for example, about 85% of the TSA personnel are working without pay, but they still have to work as essential workers. That's true of many members of the Coast Guard as well, who've had their missions changed a little bit. And though it costs some DHS workers in the general ICE and elsewhere, some of them, they're not getting paid to do as much as they want to do, but the ICE and Customs and Border Patrol have plenty of money. That's not where the problem is. The problem is in the Coast Guard, in TSA, and in FEMA. FEMA becomes an increasing problem that got showcased last night in the president's address, having to do with who's going to help shovel the snow in some of these really hard-hit areas of the Northeast. Some of that, of course, can also, if people can parse what's going on, comes back and is a difficulty with DHS working with states and localities around the country. There's been real uncertainty as to whether the grants that many of the states and localities apply for to help things like flood repair, shoveling snow, respond to weather-based emergencies have not been being processed, and they're being quite slow. Moreover, there seems to be at least some perception of targeting in some parts of the country that are controlled more by Democrats than Republicans. What that says is all sides are facing some degrees of difficulty here, and how long it goes on, probably the harder it's going to get for both sides to come to any kind of agreement.
It's interesting because I think the last time we saw this, which was just last year with the longest government shutdown in U.S. history, Democrats really dug their heels in. And it really wasn't until maybe around day 30 or around that time did I think the American public really started to wake up to what was going on and have a better understanding of what was going on, what Democrats essentially were fighting for. It seems like they're sort of kind of taking a page out of the book and implementing it again here as well.
No, I think that's exactly right. And one could argue, of course, at least strategically, this is really one of the sole leverage points that Democrats have. They're facing a unified party government. It's a little bit easier for the Democrats to have some leverage in the Senate, but even there's increasing pressure from the president on Majority Leader Thune and some other of the top Republicans there. So it's getting very close to whether this is going to turn into a filibuster situation rather than an up or down vote in which the Republican vice president breaks the tie. So I think that's where we could be headed. What that does could well mean that there's going to be some real pressure on Democrats to at least get things settled, but also on Republicans to say, wait a second, we too are concerned in many parts of the country about the way that ICE agencies and the Customs and Border Patrol are treating residents in our communities as well. So it's a really difficult situation.
Do these fights that we're witnessing now set up the 2026 midterm elections favorably for either party? I mean, will Americans think about these shutdowns and the arguments surrounding them when we're heading to the ballot box in November?
You know, a great question. And like everything else, it's hard to know because it's hard to know who actually will turn out to vote, who will be mobilized to vote, really catalyzed by these kinds of events and concerns about on both sides about whether government is working or not working. And so that really remains to be seen. Moreover, for some people, that's quite a ways away, with some of the primaries beginning to take place now and then through the summer. So some of that is feeding into all of this as well. Moreover, finally, the longer the shutdown goes on, the more we get into spring break and then the FIFA World Cup and then going into the Olympics. All of that's a real difficulty in terms of the TSA and heightened security demands on the government generally.
Yeah, we already saw the suspension of global entry.
There's exactly.
And even when we heard about pre-check being suspended, I mean, there was pretty much uproar on the streets, and they reversed that quickly. So we'll see how that moves forward.
Yeah, yes. I think so. And the final thing I'm going to say is some of what we're seeing here is that so many things are happening so quickly, and it isn't as though there are plans laid out for how one copes with these kinds of issues. And so some of what DHS has been doing really reflects lack of full confidence in handling these kinds of situations. Why? Well, in part because of the numbers of people that have left the federal government with the expertise, but also in part that many of those people now are on furlough. So some of that expertise is no longer in the offices.
Oh, interesting. And it seems that, well, that would be sort of actions of the past coming to sort of bite you back again.
Could be. Now, of course, in terms of a voter's perception, how much people have the bandwidth or the focus or the energy to tie all of those things together and actually lead them to cast a ballot. I think increasingly people are feeling, again, removed from government, not having any real clear say in what's going on or what's not going on. And I think that's true, by the way, across the parties in a more polarized context by parties, and that's true around the country as well.
Dr. Holt, I'm curious about your thoughts about the midterm elections. I mean, given everything that we have seen leading up into this point, I wonder, does it appear that either side really has the advantage here? I mean, there was a lot of speculation, a lot of analysis that Democrats would do very well this midterm elections, but certain polling suggests that it actually might be anyone's game come November.
I think so, because for a variety of reasons. One of them is it's hard to know who's going to be mobilized to actually turn out to vote. What's also unclear is what's going to happen with some of the redistricting challenges that are going forward around the country. Moreover, whether the redistricting is going to make the difference that people said going in that it was. There's very little evidence that it's going to be that the big swings that folks saw. Well, that's hard when you've got really marginal districts and primaries going on in which both parties are getting involved in deciding who would be the best candidate to run in the midterm elections. I think right now it's a little bit too early to do any prediction, but I suspect it's going to end up being a surprise in terms of who turns out to vote, how those votes are counted, and then of course the sub-theme of there will be some degree of skepticism about how votes are counted, whether votes are counted, and all of that. So a lot of these things are coming back to could be various kinds of revenge if one thinks that way, or poetic justice, depending on which of the sides one picks.
All right. Well, of course, we'll be here to watch it all and analyze the show.
Indeed, we do. And the easiest thing to say is we're not really sure. It's all uncertain. Yes.
Because that's the truth.
That is the truth. Unfortunately, people don't like hearing it, but I think that's the way it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, Dr. Holt, good to see you as always. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you.
Good to join you. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Now, the partial shutdown is impacting more than 260,000 Department of Homeland Security workers across agencies, including TSA, FEMA, and the Coast Guard. Now, TSA employees and travelers alike are left waiting and wondering what happens next. Sarah Robinson spoke with passengers at Reagan National Airport who say the uncertainty is hard to ignore.
Well, here at DCA, flights are taking off, security lines are moving, and on the surface, everything looks business as usual. But behind the scenes, TSA agents are working today without pay, and many say they can't help but feel for the people who keep them safe, and they want a resolution soon.
If I was TSA, that would not be cool. I would not be okay with that.
TSA agents once again becoming the most visible face of a standstill in Congress.
It seems like with all the government shutdowns, that's the thing that finally tips the scale, is the airports.
This partial shutdown stems from a broader stalemate over DHS funding, which includes the TSA, following sharp disagreements in Congress over immigration enforcement policies after the deaths of two people, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, during a federal operation in Minnesota. Stay back! Democrats are holding firm, calling for new requirements for immigration agents, including a ban on face masks, mandatory identification, and the use of body cameras. But heading into a holiday weekend, there still is no deal.
The only way to ensure that ICE is actually reined in is to change things dramatically, boldly, meaningfully through legislation. And that's what this showdown is all about.
Why are all the Democrats going to shut down our entire DHS when we all know that it has no impact on ICE?
Funding for TSA ran out Saturday, marking the second time in just months that TSA employees have been required to work without pay.
I can only imagine working and not knowing when I'm going to get paid. So that would really be, I understand and I sympathize with them.
The FAA, which oversees air traffic control, remains funded, meaning widespread flight delays are not expected. But if the partial shutdown drags on, officials warn it could eventually impact security wait times.
I'm definitely going to have more compassion for the TSA.
So far, President Trump has offered little optimism about reaching a deal with Democrats, saying only, quote, "We'll see what happens." Of course, we'll also keep you up to date with any movement from Congress and how it would impact your travel plans. Reporting at DCA, I'm Sarah Robinson, WUSA 9.
And with this partial government shutdown, we've seen a lot of confusion with TSA's PreCheck. The Department of Homeland Security backtracked on its announcement that the program would be suspended, but not before causing many flyers to worry. Chris Van Cleve has more from Phoenix about this back and forth.
A confusing weekend for flyers as the Department of Homeland Security announced Saturday night it was suspending both TSA PreCheck and global entry, blaming the ongoing partial government shutdown impacting DHS. But by Sunday morning, the agency reversed track, reopened TSA PreCheck. The announcement to shut it down came as a surprise to airlines and the entire aviation industry. There was substantial pushback. TSA PreCheck now back open. The agency saying any staffing issues will be addressed case by case, airport by airport. Now, initially, sources told CBS News that Global Entry, which has expedited customs back into the U.S., would also reopen, and we have reports that it did at some airports across the country. DHS now saying definitively Global Entry is suspended due to the shutdown. What does that mean for flyers? It means if you're coming back into the U.S. during the shutdown now, you need to at least prepare for the possibility of much longer lines going through customs. There is a mobile passport app that you can download for your phone that may save you some time, but still lingering uncertainty as to what exactly the impacts will be as this shutdown continues. There does not appear to be an imminent end to this shutdown. TSA officers working without pay. Essentially, they will get a partial paycheck this week, and then they won't get paid again until the shutdown is resolved. Chris Van Cleve, CBS News, Phoenix.
Yeah, and even now, TSA PreCheck still isn't safe as the partial government shutdown continues. Department of Homeland Security Kristi Noem says they will continue to evaluate TSA's needs.
As we go forward and without funding for DHS, if we end up in a situation where these TSA officers have to go get other jobs and provide for their families, we'll have to prioritize where the most travelers go through their security checkpoints. So we're grateful for all these TSA officers who are out there still working their jobs, making sure we can safely travel, even though they're not getting paid. And all these members of Congress are getting their paychecks.
Yeah, President Trump's recent State of the Union address, the president focused part of his speech on the ongoing partial government shutdown, criticizing Democrats as the ones holding up the funding for DHS.
Democrats in this chamber have cut off all funding for the Department of Homeland Security. It's all cut off. It's all cut off. They have instituted another Democrat shutdown, the first one costing us 2 points on GDP. 2 points we lost on GDP, which probably made them quite happy, actually. Now they have closed the agency responsible for protecting Americans from terrorists and murderers. Tonight I'm demanding the full and immediate restoration of all funding for the border security, Homeland Security of the United States, and also for helping people clean up their snow. We have no money because of the Democrats, and it would be nice, we'd love to give you a hand at cleaning it up, but you gave no money. Nobody's getting paid. It's a shame.
And while the president may be blaming the partial government shutdown on Democrats, they see it very differently. Many Democrats continue to call for changes at DHS after the recent killings of 2 American citizens by federal agents. But Republicans say taking away DHS's funding isn't the way to go about making those changes.
On the funding talks with the partial government shutdown and where things stand with DHS, where do you think the realistic option is to move forward? You have some Democratic
It's up to my Democratic friends.
They're saying that they want to separate some spending packages.
I don't think that's going to happen. There's no reason to separate it. They've agreed to all of this once. The bill before us was negotiated carefully with Senate Democrats and House Democrats. And there's no reason for them not to support it. And I'm not going to vote to separate it. If they want to leave FEMA shut down and cause people flight delays and disrupt the American people, then that's on them.
Do you think there's any chance there'll be a DHS funding deal by Friday?
I'm skeptical, but I'd hope so. My view is we should separate out the TSA, the Coast Guard, and FEMA, and just have the focus be where it should be, and that is on the lawlessness of ICE.
There hasn't been any real recent communication with the White House. Our position, as Democrats, continues to be, listen, we need dramatic, meaningful, bold, transformational reform with ICE. The American people know ICE is out of control, and they need to be reined in. Kristi Noem's got to go, but we don't just need a change in personnel, we need a change in policy, and it has to be dramatic. And until Republicans come to that conclusion, then the DHS funding bill is not going to be in a position to move forward. Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They've been lecturing the American people since November of 2024 that the country was in the midst of some massive MAGA takeover. Clearly that hasn't happened, but it's in their head. And so the notion that when the government either fully shuts down which took place during the 43-day Trump Republican shutdown in the fall, or the DHS shutdown, is the fault of anyone other than Republicans. Nobody's buying it, just like the American people didn't buy it in the fall. Republicans have made an intentional decision that they would rather shut down FEMA, shut down the Coast Guard, and shut down TSA than actually reform ICE and get them under control so that ICE agents behave like every other law enforcement agency in the country. That's all we're asking for. Conduct yourself in a manner consistent with every other law enforcement agency in the country. And unfortunately, Republicans, at least to date, have been reluctant to do it. But the American people have abandoned them, even on immigration enforcement, where Donald Trump's public approval ratings are way underwater on an issue that he thought was his signature issue. That's gone, just like the rest of his presidency.
And I hope everybody will remember that tonight, even as we stand in the midst of yet another painful and unnecessary Democrat shutdown of the government. I mean, it's almost unbelievable to us. Not one, not two, but now 3 government shutdowns in just the last 100 days. What in the world are they thinking? This time they've taken hostage, as you know, the Department of Homeland Security. The department that is literally in its name, it's very indicative of its duties. It keeps Americans safe. And so funding for the agencies that protect our borders and mitigate disasters and help keep all of us able to walk down the streets without fear. That's the agency they've chosen to hold hostage. Well before the funding deadline, Republicans, as you know, worked in good faith to pass a year-long, full-year funding for DHS, and we did that through a bipartisan committee process. Democrats in both the House and the Senate negotiated on that, and now Democrats in both chambers have reneged on that bipartisan deal. Just 1 week into this, the consequences of Democrat shutdown are already painfully clear. Look at FEMA. Their operations are really important right now. If they haven't noticed, we have an historic season of winter storms slamming the East Coast, even as we speak, in the northern parts. TSA is having to make difficult resource decisions, as you've seen, and agents working another week without pay. Some of those are high-stress positions. It's not right. It's not fair.
We sent them a proposal a week ago Monday. We still haven't heard back. Crickets. And so it's in their court. As for getting this done, we all want to see TSA and the other agencies funded. That's up to the Republicans. Very simply, all they have to do is agree with our simple ideas that every police department just about in America follows, and we'll get it all done. It's plain and simple.
Now, some lawmakers are pushing to hold the Trump administration accountable for its federal workforce cuts. House Democrats on the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform launched a series of investigations into the Department of Government Efficiency, better known as DOGE. Elon Musk promised DOGE would save American taxpayers $2 trillion. And as our Larry Miller learned, not only did they not meet that goal, they also upended the lives of hundreds of thousands of federal workers, many of those in our area.
I want to thank, first of all of you for being here today.
Thursday's oversight shadow field hearing at the Fairfax County Government Center took a closer look at the impact of DOGE and the Trump administration's reorganization efforts on the federal workforce and the functioning of the government.
We know the Trump-Vance administration has taken a wrecking ball to our civil service and decimated the federal workforce. In so doing, it has harmed everyone in America.
Among the changes, the dismantling of international aid agency USAID, cancellations in government funding and programs, and more than 300,000 federal employees and contractors who left the workforce in 2025. The Trump administration has repeatedly defended the changes, saying that they have created a government that works more efficiently. On its website, DOGE claimed to have saved taxpayers approximately $215 billion. But experts have pushed back, suggesting that the DOGE savings are closer to anywhere between $1 to $7 billion.
It actually also saved no money. Now, as you can see here, federal spending was actually higher in 2025. And while Donald Trump ripped away jobs, wrecked government services, and attacked programs, he handed billions of dollars in tax cuts to the wealthiest Americans.
The hearing included testimony from watchdog groups, elected officials, and former federal workers who described a chaotic, even dangerous exit from the federal workforce.
I struggled for a long time.
Kenneth Bledsoe worked as a lawyer with USAID. He and his family were stationed in the Democratic Republic of Congo when protests ignited outside of the U.S. Embassy in Kinshasa. His family was evacuated, but getting home would be harrowing.
Explosions and gunfire, leaving under cover of night, going days without sleep, only a carry-on bag for each of us, crowded onto tiny boats with our fellow diplomats, their babies, their pets, off to restart a life from scratch in the Northern Virginia winter.
Bledsoe and his family made it back to the U.S. Soon thereafter, he, along with thousands of his colleagues, were let go. Thursday's hearing represents a step in what's been described as a concerted effort to address the alleged missteps by DOGE and advocate for a federal workforce that's undergone the largest peacetime cut in U.S. history.
A federal judge recently ordered the federal government to disclose a roster of DOGE employees and their affiliates. You can count on WUSA 9 to stay on top of the reductions to the federal workforce that's affected and what it means for our communities. In the meantime, scan that QR code you see on your screen. It will take you to a special section on WUSA9.com dedicated to our coverage of this story. And of course, we'll keep you updated right here on federal workforce fallout. We appreciate you being here with us. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
You've learned a lot in life, on the job, in the military, raising a family. At Prince George's Community College, that experience can count as college credit. You could earn up to 15 college credits towards your degree just for what you already know. Eligible Prince George's County grads can even attend tuition-free with the Promise Scholarship. So, what's your game plan? Turn your journey into a degree at Prince George's Community College.